I spent my whole first year as a life coach trying to sell with traditional sales tactics. One, it didn't work. Two, I hated it.
In today's episode, you will hear all about the difference between messaging that makes for good marketing and the actual expertise and value that you deliver at your event. Be sure you're signed up for the Elevate Your Podcast Summit too, because that is where Josh Coates will go even deeper on how to implement what he and Paul discussed today.
You hosted a summit earlier this year, and it was all virtual, if I recall, and definitely not your first event. I know you've got at least a small team helping you to put that on and get all the tech working and all that. What was a challenge you ran into with your event, or the biggest obstacle that was in your way when you were putting it on?
Biggest obstacle putting on an event, I mean, for me is always promotion.
Hmm.
That would have been a totally different answer, several years ago. I mean, from 2016 to 2020, we did monthly live virtual events every single month. Back then it was like, okay, we need the opt-in page, we need the thank you page, we need the thank you page upsells, we need the email sequence. At this point, most of that is built out, and it's just about tweaking and playing. This time we had a little bit of a different angle. In January, we did a 6-figure summit, and the messaging was like pretty vague, if I'm being honest. It was just like, do you want to grow a 6-figure business? Get the tangible steps. We just did one 2 weekends ago, and it was more of like social media summit. It was really the same structure. Everything else was the same, but the angle of how we were promoting it changed. If you go study my business behind the scenes, I feel like that's what I'm the master of, is find 20 different angles to essentially sell the same thing. And that's really what good sales and marketing is, in my opinion. Is it's great to have copy and paste, but when you're dealing with both a warm and a cold audience, your warm audience wants to see something a little bit different.
Right.
If it's only going to cold audience, like Russell Brunson spends probably $1 million a month on ads. It's all new people. He never has to change the angle. It can be like you're one funnel away over and over and over and over because it's always new people. But if you're someone like me who is spending several $1,000s on ads but also wanting to keep your email list and your Instagram audience engaged, then you got to have a little bit of a tweak, or there's really no reason to come to this event versus the last event.
Right.
And so for us, that's probably the biggest challenge, is like each time, what is the angle this time that's going to get enough people from the warm list to re-engage and want to be a part of another event? Because I do think someone who only does static stuff, you are missing out on hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions of dollars in sales, because the live event is one of the number one things that gets people off the fence.
Right.
Because static, like, the reality is they can just keep hanging out with you in the background over and over and over and over and over. It's something about that live experience that creates more of a tangible connection. And then you combine that with things like bonuses and deadlines, and essentially it finally forces someone to say, okay, I'm sick and tired of just listening in the background. I want to be a part of this person's program. I'm in.
When we're actually there and we're meeting people, or we're even just having a Zoom conversation or something like this, there's something in our animal brain that goes, oh, this is real. Because you can read Harry Potter book. People can write whatever they want. You can learn whatever secrets about life or sales or whatever.
Yeah.
But when you actually meet people, there's something in our animal brain that clicks and it becomes real. That real feeling is a big part of that belief bridge that you teach for how to get those conversions. You even start the belief bridge process before they even come to the event. Your essentially sales process starts on first contact from square one. So if you wouldn't mind kind of walking us through how you integrate the methodology of the belief bridge just all the way through and create this holistic experience. Because a lot of people go, okay, this is the marketing, and the marketing's job is to get them into the seat.
Right.
And then once they're in the seat, they absorb the content, and that builds trust. And then after
Yeah.
that is when we go to the sales thing, and it's all very like different
Yeah.
classes in school. So I want to hear this holistic approach. It's really different than a lot of what I hear,
Yeah.
because you hear a lot of salespeople going, we've got this attention, we've built this trust, now we're going to focus on the sales talk, the tactic.
Right.
But the belief bridge is a strategic thing
Yeah.
that means that the tactics almost don't matter because the strategy does the
Yeah.
work for you.
Yeah, so the belief bridge is at the beginning. It's a lot of just market research. I say a lot. Please don't take that as like, oh, we spend 6 months doing 90 one-on-one calls. It's more
Right.
about honestly just Facebook and Instagram polls and going to our most engaged 5 to 10 people. Doesn't take any more than that. And
Right.
just asking them these questions about what they want.
Or just reading through like Facebook groups and finding what language people are
Yes.
using, right? It doesn't have to be real
Correct.
intense, but you do have to put the time
Absolutely.
in one way or another.
Yeah, exactly. And so from there, we're starting off the bridge again around what they care about and what limiting beliefs they have around that thing. So when it comes to the promotion side, the point is to bring up what they want and why they feel like they can't have that over and over and over and over. So by the time they're showing up to your event, they should already know in their head this event is going to, let's just take some of mine, for instance. This event is going to help me make 6 figures, even if I don't have a large following, even if I'm not super charismatic, even if I don't have all day and night to be on my phone or laptop because I'm working a 9 to 5 job and I'm doing this literally in like the cracks of my day. The point of the marketing is to sell them on why this event can actually change their life. But the only way to do that is to point them to the result they want to have and then help remove the limiting beliefs they have about that and then point to the process, whatever that is. Now, I think it's kind of important. I learned this from Russell Brunson, actually, not to give away the points that you're going to make. Let's say, for instance, I'm going to sell the 626 program, which is all about the sales psychology mixed with the subconscious of like knowing yourself and working through some of your own stuff, right? So I'm never going to say in the emails, and that's why I'm going to teach you sales psychology. I'm just going to keep saying over and over, this one thing is what I found that changed the game for me. And there's lots of ways to say that. So like I spent my whole first year as a life coach trying to sell with traditional sales tactics. 1, it didn't work. 2, I hated it. Then I finally found in my second year that there was actually more of my life coaching background that just might make for a better sales system. And so I started implementing some of that, and it started working like crazy. So on this webinar, I'm going to teach you all of the different ways I integrated life coaching into sales to make it feel good, serve people, and work better. So like there's a vague idea that it comes from my life coaching background, but I'm not going to say, and that's why you'll learn sales psychology.
Right.
That's why you'll learn how the subconscious mind is. Those points are reserved for the call. That's why they want to show up to figure out what this thing is. And if I accidentally say too much in advance, no one shows up because they're already convinced they've heard that before or learned that before, or maybe have already done that and there's no need to show up.
Right. It's like the magician saying, it's because the card's marked. You
Yeah.
just wouldn't ever do that. But we do that in our sales sometimes, in our marketing, because we're justifying it to ourselves, or, there's
Correct.
more reasons. It's kind of interesting how you put it, where people are showing up kind of ready to be transformed, because that's how I view events.
Yeah.
I wrote 2 books of fiction last year. And when I
Cool.
sort of decide what I'm writing in the next scene, if there's not a meaningful event or change,
Yeah.
I don't write that scene, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
As fun as it is, that one has to get cut, because the events are what move the story along, not the action.
Yeah.
Right? It's the
Right.
events that happen, and events are those places of growth, those moments of change when the story flips, and they delineate different parts of our lives, right? the end of our childhood, the moment you fell in love. These are events, right? The wedding ceremony, that's a big one, right? That's a life-changing moment that they memorialize with a book and invite all these people. Like, events are how we change.
Yeah.
And we attend an event hoping to experience that promise of change, right?
Yep.
What type of event is this? Well, a wedding is a change in this way, but going to a business
Yeah.
conference is a change in a different way. And attending,
Yeah.
this six-figure summit, well, that's a change because I'm making a commitment and setting a
Yeah.
goal and I'm actually like diving into it. And so there's this change that happens when we engage with an event, when we attend an event. And
Yeah.
what you just talked about is don't take the magic out of the transformation, don't take the heat out of the oven. What groundwork would you say makes an event magical? Is it just that actual mechanism being removed so there's mystery?
To me, the thing that makes the event magical is when you really nail toward the beginning the feelings of frustration other people
Mm.
have about the things they've been told before that you know aren't good strategies on a subconscious level. When we have attempted to do something before and failed, there's two
Mm.
things we can do, and sometimes we do both. One, we blame ourselves. Two, we blame the person that taught us whatever this mechanism is, right? So it's
Right.
like, oh, I learned this thing from this person, and that didn't work for me, so now there's like ill feelings toward that person. And for me, something that's really important, I'm gonna throw out another Russell Brunson quote. I think it's obvious that I've studied him a
Mm.
lot. He says, if all you do is present a little bit better version of something people have already tried, they bring all of their limiting beliefs from those failed attempts with them. In order
Mm.
for someone to truly engage in what you're teaching without their limiting beliefs, they need to feel like this is something that is brand new and totally different than what they've already tried. And so my goal with the belief bridge is to actually walk them through the most common experienced failures that I know everyone on the call has had. Take them through those things. Let them feel it with them, and then show them with stories and analogies that it's not actually their fault that they have failed. It's been bad information. And what
Mm.
that allows everyone to do is like, okay, six figures, like, okay, I'm going to check this out because I am curious. And it sounds like maybe he's got something that could be like good, maybe a little bit different. I don't know, but I'm still skeptical, right? You
Mhm.
show up on the event and I walk you through everything you have tried and failed at. First of all, this creates an insane level of connection and trust, because it's one thing to say, oh, I know what it's like to struggle. It's another thing to walk them through it in such a way that they're like, there is no way this person would actually know what I'm going through. Like there's no way they could know all of those things about my struggle without personally having experienced some of it. I like to say it like this: don't tell people you know how it feels, show them. Like, the second I say, oh, I know what it feels like to struggle, people are like, well, screw you. You make $1 million a year now, so we don't care, right? But if I can
Right.
actually take them through the failures and they see, oh, my God, this guy literally knows exactly what I've been through, now there is a trust of, okay, he's been where I'm at and got here, so there's a level of trust. But then I'm also, while creating that trust, helping them to leave those failures behind as we release that guilt and that shame that they had associated with it. And I expose why this didn't actually work. So I will actually take time in my webinar to expose things that I know that are popular that people have kind of almost like taken out of context. So for instance, one of my favorite
Mm.
ones is to play with the compound effect. It's a very, very popular message, especially in the mindset world. The compound effect says little things done over time turn into great results. And it's one of the things that sometimes coaches and mentors will use to keep people around. Like, oh, it hasn't worked for you yet? Well, it's just the compound effect. You just got to wait. Just keep plugging away. And eventually, like magically out of nowhere, all of your hard work and little successes will like lead up. And so I will use an analogy. I'll say, what would you do if your son or your daughter was struggling with algebra? And they came to you and said, Mom, Dad, like I'm really struggling. I can't figure out how to solve for X. And instead of actually teaching them to solve for X, you just say, it's okay, honey. Don't you know that the compound effect will eventually take over? Like if you just show up day after day and they say, okay, that's cool, Mom, but I have a test tomorrow. And I don't have time
Right.
for the compound effect. Like, I need to get this figured out so that I can pass my test tomorrow and not fail. And you say, no, don't worry about the little things. Life is not a sprint, it's a marathon. At some point, this just sounds insane. You do actually have to show them how to solve for X.
Right. As soon as you have that clear goal, you see how silly it is, right?
Yeah.
I need this result.
Exactly.
I need
People.
to pay the bills. I need to solve this cash flow.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
you can't hit me with that long-term mumbo
Right.
jumbo.
Yeah, and so that's what I use to kind of like challenge people's thoughts and beliefs. They're already feeling guilty and shameful about the fact that it hasn't worked yet, but they're like holding on to the compound effect. So everything's, and this is me kind of like exposing the person that told them this, which allows them to go, okay, I don't have to fully embrace the compound effect if I need to solve for X. Maybe I really do need a strategy. And that opens their mind to listening to the strategy because now there is a logical reason to need a new solution. And I want to make sure that I make that point. The belief bridge is not about just creating so much emotion and hype and energy that people join you because it's like a concert. Now,
Right.
I love creating that kind of energy. That's one of the reasons live events is so powerful because you can create that live energy. At the same time, there needs to be some logical reasons for why your solution is better than what they've already tried.
Right. And from everything you just said, if I can really just boil it down for our audience, you have permission. In fact, I would say you almost have an obligation to provide a solution at your event so there can be transformation. There is an attitude that I've run into in the virtual event space and the online summit space that you're like, kind of just providing tips and value and some of this sort of stuff. You at your event are trying to transform lives. You're trying to give that value. You have Josh and I's permission right now to make sure that that actually happens at your event. You can easily just view business as rescuing people from their troubles. You have permission to rescue people and step in and be an expert. That's actually something I would change about virtual events, is this attitude that just providing value as if the value itself is magical, as opposed to providing a solution, an actual crossing the whatever the belief bridge is crossing. Bridge the gap. You can do it. You don't have to apologize for bridging the gap and being quite serious about bridging that gap and being very serious about helping people over by building their own bridge to each one. What's something that you would change, Josh, about the way virtual events are right now?
Well, I mean, probably the same thing you just said. I would say two things. One is the messaging. People put on events and they think, yeah, as long as I add enough value, people should want to join me. That's how I felt my first live event that I put on. I was so frustrated that no one joined me. Thankfully, I had learned ownership. And I woke up the next morning and said, okay, it's not anybody else's fault. I have to keep learning. I have to keep growing. And what I realized is like, I have a responsibility to learn how to sell the process that I do if I really believe it changes lives. Too many people have, I call it the artist mentality. I played in bands for many years, so I ran into a lot of people that just thought, if I'm really good at the guitar, people should show up to hear me play. They should.
And they'll recognize me, yeah.
We have deserved and earned the right to get these things because we are good at our craft. And what I found
Hmm.
as a business person is like nobody owes you anything. This is your business. This is your dream. Nobody in the world owes you anything. And I don't care how good you are, you owe them to learn how to properly connect with them so that they will see the value in what you offer. You got to get rid of any and every form of like people owe me something. Get rid of
Hmm.
all that because nobody owes you anything. Every single human alive today is just trying to figure out how to make their life better and take better care of the people they love. They are not trying
Right.
to figure out how they should help you. That is not on their agenda. So if
Right.
you really do want to help people, if you really do want to solve problems, then it's your job. I have the same thoughts and beliefs about politics in general. Go sit with the people who have the problems and listen. Spend less time talking about what you do and more time listening to what they actually want, need, and desire so that you can meet them where they're at. And then, of course, introduce them to the solution. But like John Maxwell says, nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care. So, like, you being an expert means absolutely nothing to anybody in the world. Now, still become an expert. I want you to be an expert because inside the program, that's what they need is the expert. But they don't need the expert until they join the program. Before they join, they need the person that can connect with them and essentially build a bridge of trust so that they want the solution you offer.
Right. Jordan and I were building a new software to solve this gap. But there's such a sense in a lot of virtual events that you just come and you sit and you watch it like a glorified YouTube video, and that autonomy to engage isn't there. A lot of times they even shut down the chat and do some of these sorts of things
Yeah.
because they want to talk about themselves instead of prioritizing listening, like you said. And that whole attitude of, well, they owe me, if you flip it around, it's almost like if I'm a rescuer on a boat, I'm that high skill person that can actually like make a difference in lives,
Mm-hmm.
but I never throw a life preserver out into the
Yeah. Yeah.
water, right? That's what your sales is. You're throwing
Yeah.
life preservers to
Yeah.
help people. I hope. I
Right.
mean, you
Yeah.
should be. But if you're like, well, they owe it to me, they should just get in the boat. Yeah, the strong swimmers, the people who are keeping their heads about them and aren't distracted, they might look and see your boat and go, oh, I should go climb in the boat. But that's a
Yeah.
rare person, actually,
Right.
right? Your sales technique is trying to help the people that need help.
Yeah.
And that's why something like this belief bridge is so valuable for building your events around and incorporating that holistic strategy of walking them all the way through it and sitting and listening at the start and then actually
Yep.
meeting them where they're at, going to their level. If you're working on something that you worked through, going back to that root and
Yeah.
meeting people where they're at, and then you can move forward. You know, we're all interested in the move forward, but
Right.
that only comes with these previous steps. And so that's this belief bridge. You've said it so well. That's really what I want our listeners to take away from this discussion is the power and importance of those listening steps. We can call it market research if you want something real
Yeah.
nice, but it's that personable connection that you can make, and that work beforehand is what gets you the results on the back end. So thank you so much, Josh, for coming and being with us today. Really appreciate it.
Of course.